Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Nashtaprayashu Apadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Just go right to the shloka because we're sort of running behind a little bit on time. So we are in Canto 1, Chapter 9, 34 verse. The passing away of Bhishma Dev in the presence of Lord Krishna is the chapter. I think this is the melody, but please correct me if I'm wrong. Yuti Turaga Rajavidum Ravishvak Kacha Lulita Shamavarya Lankritasye Mama Nishita Sharair Vibidyamana Tvachi Vilasa Kavachestu Krishna Atma Yudi Turaga Rajavidum Ravishvak Kacha Lulita Shamavarya Lankritasye Mama Nishita Sharair Vibidyamana Tvachi Vilasa Kavachestu Krishna Atma. Yudi Turaga Rajavidum Ravishvak Kacha Lulita Shramavaya Lankritasye Mama Nishita Sharaye Vibidyamana Tvachi Vilasa Kavachestu Krishna Atma. Yudi Turaga Rajavidum Ravishvak Kacha Lulita Shamavarya Lankritasye Mama Nishita Sharair Vibidyamana Jivilasa Kavachestu Krishna Atma. Dituraga Rajavidum Ravishvak Kacha Lulita Shamavarya Lankritasye Mama Nishita Sharair Vibidyamana Tvachi Vilasa Kavachestu Krishna Atma. Okay, so let's just go right to the purport, just in the interest of time again, and we'll do the repeat. On the battlefield where Sri Krishna attended Arjuna out of friendship, please repeat. The flowing hair of Lord Krishna turned ashen due to the dust raised by the hoofs of the horses. And because of his labor, beads of sweat wetted his face. all these decorations, intensified by the wounds dealt by my sharp arrows, were enjoyed by him. Let my mind thus go unto Sri Krishna. So this is Bhishma Dev. He's about to leave his body and he's glorifying Krishna. And we can see how it's very interesting how Bhishma Deva is saying that the wounds that he inflicted upon Krishna, they were enjoyed by Krishna. So we'll hear more about that. Amagyanatimidandasya gananjana shalakaya chakshurunmilitamyena tasmai shri gurave namaha vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindhivya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Please give me your blessings that I can say something helpful today. The Lord is the absolute form of eternity, bliss, and knowledge. As such, the transcendental loving service to the Lord in one of the 5 principal relations, namely Shanta, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya, i.e. neutrality, servitorship, fraternity, parental affection, and conjugal love, is graciously accepted by the Lord when offered to the Lord in genuine love and affection. Sri Bhishma Dev is a great devotee of the Lord in the relation of servitorship. Thus, his throwing of sharp arrows at the transcendental body of the Lord is as good as the worship of another devotee who throws soft roses upon him. So this is very interesting. His throwing of sharp arrows at the transcendental body of the Lord is as good as the worship of another devotee who throws soft roses upon him. It appears that Bhishma Dev is repenting the actions he committed against the person of the Lord. But factually, the Lord's body was not at all pained due to his transcendental existence. His body is not matter. Both he himself and his body are complete spiritual identity. Spirit is never pierced, burnt, dried, moistened, etc. This is vividly explained in the Bhagavad Gita. So also it is stated in the Skanda Purana. It is said that spirit is always uncontaminated and indestructible. It cannot be distressed, nor can it be dried up. When Lord Vishnu in his incarnation appears before us, he seems to be like one of the conditioned souls, materially encaged, just to bewilder the asuras or the non-believers who are always alert to kill the Lord, even from the very beginning of his appearance. Kamsa wanted to kill Krishna, and Ravana wanted to kill Ram, because foolishly they were unaware of the fact that the Lord is never killed, for the spirit is never annihilated. Would anybody else like to read a portion of the purport? Because it's a little bit longish, so I thought we could break it up. Would anybody else like to read a section, or should I just keep reading? Okay, it's more efficient, I think, if I read. Therefore, Bhishma Dev's piercing of the body of Lord Krishna is a sort of bewildering problem for the non-devotee atheist. But those who are devotees or liberated souls are not bewildered. Bhishma Dev appreciated the all-merciful attitude of the Lord because he did not leave Arjuna alone, although he was disturbed by the sharpened arrows of Bhishma Dev, nor was he reluctant to come before Bhishma's deathbed, even though he was ill-treated by him on the battlefield. Bhishma's repentance and the Lord's merciful attitude are both unique in this picture. Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti, a great acharya and devotee in the humor of conjugal love, remarks very saliently in this regard. He says that the wounds created on the body of the Lord by the sharpened arrows of Bhishma Dev were as pleasing to the Lord as the biting of a fiancé who bites the Lord's body directed by a strong sense of sex desire. Such biting by the opposite sex is never taken as a sign of enmity, even if there is a wound on the body. Therefore, the fighting as an exchange of transcendental pleasure between the Lord and his pure devotee, Sri Bhishma Dev, was not at all mundane. Besides that, since the Lord's body and the Lord are identical, there was no possibility of wounds in the absolute body. The apparent wounds caused by the sharpened arrows are misleading to the common man, but one who has a little absolute knowledge can understand the transcendental exchange in the chivalrous relation. The Lord was perfectly happy with the wounds caused by the sharpened arrows of Bhishma Dev. The word vidyamana is significant because the Lord's skin is not different from the Lord. Because our skin is different from our soul, in our case, the word vidyamana, or being bruised and cut, would have been quite suitable. Transcendental bliss is of a different variety, and the variety of activities in the mundane world is but a perverted reflection of transcendental bliss. Because everything in the mundane world is qualitatively mundane, it is full of inebrieties. Whereas in the absolute realm, because everything is of the same absolute nature, there are varieties of enjoyment without inebriety. The Lord enjoyed the wounds created by his great devotee Bhishma Dev, and because Bhishma Dev is a devotee in the chivalrous relation, he fixes up his mind on Krishna in that wounded condition. So I'll just read that part again. Because Bhishma Dev is a devotee in the chivalrous relation, he fixes up his mind on Krishna in that wounded condition. That's so interesting. So what is going on here? Krishna is enjoying the wounds inflicted by Bhishma Dev. He's taking pleasure in the wounds. Obviously, this is completely transcendental exchange, and we cannot put any material interpretations on it or material conceptions or try to even understand it with our material mind. Right? How are the wounds enjoyed by Krishna? So Prabhupada says in the purport, the apparent wounds caused by the sharpened arrows are misleading to the common man, but one who has little absolute knowledge can understand the transcendental exchange in the chivalrous relation. The Lord enjoyed the wounds created by his great devotee Bhishma Dev, and because Bhishma Dev is a devotee in the chivalrous relation, he fixes up his mind on Krishna in that wounded condition. It's so interesting. Bhishma Deva fixes up his mind on Krishna in that wounded condition. Obviously, we shouldn't, try this at home or try to understand it with our material senses or mind. Sri Bhishma Dev is a great devotee of the Lord in the relation of servitorship. Thus, his throwing of sharp arrows at the transcendental body of the Lord is as good as the worship of another devotee who throws soft roses upon him. Right? So the throwing of arrows by Bhishma Dev is as good as another devotee who throws roses upon him. As we know, each jiva soul has a very unique and particular rasa with Krishna, a relationship. And that rasa is just perfect for him. There's no greater than or less than in an absolute sense. Because for each soul, whatever his relationship is with the Lord, that is perfect 100% for him. So I was able to find some information in the Nectar of Devotion on this chivalrous rasa that Bhishma Dev is in. When on account of love and devotional service for the Lord, there is a special valorous enthusiasm, the resultant activities are called chivalrous. By performing chivalrous activities in fighting, one is called Yudha Vira. In all such different chivalrous activities, Krishna is the object. When a friend wants to satisfy Krishna by performing some chivalrous activities, the friend becomes the challenger and Krishna himself becomes the opponent. Right? So that's a part of that particular rasa. When a friend wants to satisfy Krishna by performing some chivalrous activities, right? So Krishna is actually satisfied by those activities, such as receiving wounds from his devotee in this particular rasa. The friend becomes the challenger and Krishna himself becomes the opponent. In such chivalrous fighting between friends, there is sometimes bragging, complacence, pride, power, taking to weapons, challenging and standing as an opponent. All these symptoms become impetuses to chivalrous devotional service. So we have found out that that is Bhishma Dev's rasa with the Lord, right? Dasya ras. and also in a position more refinedly said in a position of chivalrous relationship. And Krishna enjoys that particular mellow with that devotee and others who are in that similar rasa. Another point that can be made is that the Lord takes pleasure in fighting. I found a class by Srila Prabhupada given in LA in 1973, where Prabhupada says that he's speaking about Mother Kunti's prayer when she says that nobody can understand your transcendental pastimes. And so Prabhupada says that sometimes Krishna's pastimes are bewildering. For example, it's pretty bewildering to try to understand that he was enjoying the wounds inflicted upon him by Bhishma Dev, right? So that is bewildering, and we cannot fully understand it. Nobody can understand what is the real purpose. This is Prabhupada speaking. The real purpose is his free will. Let me go and see. He doesn't require to come to kill the demons. Krishna does not require to come to give protection to devotees. Like all these things can be done by other agents and other means. Simply by his will, everything is there. But he takes a pleasure pastime. Let me go and see. Right? So Krishna takes a pleasure pastime. And then Prabhupada says that sometimes Krishna wants to fight, because the fighting spirit is also there in Krishna. Otherwise, where do we get it? Because we are part and parcel of Krishna, all the qualities of Krishna, in minute quantity, they are within us. The fighting spirit is there in Krishna. Therefore, just like sometimes a big man or kings, they engage some wrestler to fight. They pay the wrestler to fight with the king, but he's not enemy. He is giving pleasure to the king by fighting, mock fighting. Right? He's giving pleasure to the king by fighting. Similarly, when Krishna wants to fight, who will fight with him? Some of his devotee, great devotee, will fight with him. Not ordinary. Right? So what we may perceive as Krishna's enemy, so-called enemy, is actually a great devotee. Just like a king, if he wants to practice mock fighting, some very exalted fighter, wrestler will be engaged. Similarly, that is also service. Because Krishna wants to fight, therefore some of his devotees come down to become his enemy, right? Can someone think of any examples? Because Krishna wants to fight, some of his devotees come to the material world to become his enemy. Yes, thank you. Anyone else? Any other examples? That's the obvious one, and I'll mention that in a little bit, Jai and Vijay. And Prabhupada also mentions them here, Jai and Vijay, who are Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha. Do you think they are ordinary living entity? Prabhupada says, Nrsingadev, God himself, had to come to kill Hiranyakashipu. Do you think they are ordinary? No, they're not ordinary. They're devotees. But Krishna wanted to fight. In Vaikuntha, there is no possibility of fighting because everywhere there, everyone is engaged in Krishna's service. So with whom will he fight? Therefore, he sent some great devotee in the garb of an enemy, and Krishna comes here to fight with him. At the same time, to teach us that becoming enemy of Krishna is not very profitable. Better become friend. That will be profitable. So Krishna sends his devotee in the garb of an enemy because he wants to sport and he wants to enjoy that fighting rasa. And for his own pleasure and out of his own free will. There was a moment in the Nrsingadev pastimes where Nrsingadev, he's just killed Hiranyakashipu, and he's very angry, and there's blood everywhere, and he uprooted Hiranyakashipu's heart, and he threw it at the audience of demons and demigods. And Prabhupada says in the purport that Hiranyakashipu actually took pleasure in sitting on the throne of his dear devotee. After, he had just killed him and uprooted his heart, then he took pleasure in sitting on his devotee's throne. So I'll just read a little bit from that purport. Manifesting a full effulgence and a fearsome countenance, Lord Nrsinga, being very angry and fighting, and finding no contestant to face his power and opulence, then sat down in the assembly hall on the excellent throne of the king. Because of fear and obedience, no one could come forward to serve the Lord directly. Then Prabhupada says, when the Lord sat on the throne of Hiranyakashipu, there was no one to protest. No enemy came forward on behalf of Hiranyakashipu. This means that his supremacy was immediately accepted by the demons. Another point is, and this is for us here today, is that although Hiranyakashipu treated the Lord as his bitterest enemy, he was the Lord's faithful servant in Vaikuntha. And therefore, the Lord had no hesitation in sitting on the throne that Hiranyakashipu had so laboriously created. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti remarks that sometimes with great care and attention, great saintly persons and rishis offer the Lord a valuable seat, decorated with Vedic mantras and tantras, but still the Lord does not accept those thrones. Hiranyakashipu, however, had formerly been Jai, the doorkeeper at the Vaikuntha gate. And although he had fallen because of the curse of the Brahmanas, he had gotten the nature of a demon, and although he had never offered anything to the Lord as Hiranyakashipu, the Lord is so affectionate to his devotee and servant that he nonetheless took pleasure in sitting on the throne that Hiranyakashipu had created. So Nrsingadev had just killed him, uprooted his heart, blood everywhere, and he nonetheless took pleasure in sitting on the throne that Hiranyakashipu had created. And so we cannot understand this. In this regard, it is to be understood that a devotee is fortunate in any condition of his life. Completely bewildering, transcendental. Did somebody, I'll just have one other section before we finish. But before we go there, did anybody want to comment on that, on the bewildering nature of the Lord's Leela, and how he enjoyed being pierced by the arrows of Bhishmadev, and he enjoyed sitting on the throne of his bitterest enemy, Hiranyakashipu, after he killed him? And this is all transcendental. And did anybody want to say anything about that before we go on? Okay. I guess we'll say more at the end. Also, I just wanted to add to that point. So these are transcendental exchanges, and how do we access the transcendental realm, right? Because we cannot understand all this with our mundane senses, or it's not something within the three modes. So how do we access that? Besides hearing about it, would anybody like to say? It's in the Bhagavad Gita. Anybody have an answer or an idea? How do we access that transcendental realm? Anybody?
You say other than by hearing?
Well, hearing is a part of it. Maybe it's like a trick question. I don't mean it to be a trick question. But does anybody have any ideas? How do we access the transcendental realm? Yes, hearing is a part of it. Okay, I'll just say it. So, Bhagavad Gita 14:26, Mamchaya vyavicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan sammatityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. Right? One who engages in devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, he at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. So the last point I wanted to make is this idea that Prabhupada says in a purport about inebriety. How in the spiritual realm there is all variegatedness that is a perverted reflection here, but the pastimes there and the activities there are without inebriety. So what is inebriety? Would anybody like to say? Inebriety. Prabhupada says it over and over, and we've heard it many times. The pastimes there are without inebriety. Yes, thank you. Thank you. I just want to engage you in the class. Yes, inebriated, right? The opposite of sobriety. The opposite of sobriety, which is being sober, is inebriety, which is, according to the dictionary, a state of intoxication. And then Prabhupada also expands that definition of inebriety to say inconvenience, difficulty, or defect. It's a very nice morning walk where Prabhupada talks more about this idea how in the spiritual world everything is without inebriety. One devotee says, Prabhupada, the material world is a reflection of the spiritual world. So we have different variegatedness in the material world, different living entities, plants and animals. And Prabhupada says, without the inconveniences. Means in the material world, there are so many inconveniences. So spiritual world, there is no inconvenience, inebriety. It is a reflection of the spiritual world, but there are so many difficulties here, right? So this is a reflection of the spiritual world, but in its perverted form, and therefore there are so many difficulties here. I think we can all attest to that. Therefore, it is called the material world. The devotee says, my question being, so they have all the variegatedness in the spiritual world? And Prabhupada says, yes, there are trees, there is water, birds, beasts, but they are all spiritual. Just like here, everything is material. Here, water is working according to the material laws. In the spiritual world, if I say, please come here, he will come here. I think that means water, he, because it's a person in the spiritual world. So in the spiritual world, if you say to the water, please come here, he will come here. That is the spiritual world. That's pretty ecstatic. And in another class in Tokyo in 1972, Prabhupada says, inebrieties. There is no such thing there in the spiritual world. Everything is fact and everything is real. Therefore, Anandamaya, Ananda Chinmaya Ras. There is rasa. Here is also rasa. Here rasa is not Ananda Chinmaya. This is material. There, everything is real. So I guess what we're experiencing here is not real. Right? It's pretty ecstatic. They will have also airplanes there, for example, but not this third class airplane. As soon as the machine goes wrong, it immediately crashes. There is no crashing, neither there is any necessity of machine, because they are spiritual. Just like motor car, a machine, it requires oil, it requires petrol to run on. But as we are spirit, we don't require anything. We can run without any arrangement of mechanical. We can experience that. A man is running, not that you have to put some petrol. Of course, we are putting petrol, this food stuff. That is meant for the body. But if the whole thing is spiritual, there is no more necessity of these things, material ingredient. There is no necessity that they cannot. There is the airplane. There the airplane is also spirit. It is living. It has taken the shape of airplane, but it is living. It is not false. Therefore, there's no necessity of this petrol, simply beautiful airplane, and wherever you like, you can go. They are moving in the sky. Jai. It's pretty ecstatic. So everything that is here is also there, but without inebriety. So it's something to look forward to. Would anybody like to add something or make a comment? Please, Ramiya Prabhu.
Yeah, I was just noting that in the case of Bhishma Dev, he was fighting with the Lord, but we kind of feel like he didn't actually want to kill the Lord, like Hiranyakashipu. So there was a little different mood.
Yes, thank you. That's a really, really nice point. I don't think it's quite the same. We can't put the two things in the same category. I wasn't trying to put them in the same category. The point with Hiranyakashipu was that the Lord enjoys the fighting spirit, and he therefore, sometimes a great devotee comes to the material world so that the Lord can fulfill that fighting spirit. And then in the case of Bhishma Dev, we were hearing how he's actually in a particular rasa. Under Dasya rasa, he's under a chivalrous rasa. So they're a little bit different. They're not quite the same thing. Thank you. That's a nice distinction. I appreciate that.
And Hiranyakashipu, he had to be like covered with Krishna's energy,
right,
so that he could actually fight, because he was not like trying to serve the Lord. It wasn't his mentality exactly.
Thank you.
But
That's
he
a
was.
really nice point.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ramiya Prabhu. Yes. Somebody else? Yes, Madhumati.
About your earlier point, you were asking some comment, and I was thinking of how to understand these pastimes, and I was thinking that how Srila Prabhupada is so expert in giving such examples of the material world to help us understand that.
Yes.
And he gives this, like, I don't know what word to use, but far out example that he talks about, that how between a man and a woman, that situation is not, is actually welcome.
How does Prabhupada come up with these examples?
Yeah, that's just an amazing example for us to understand such a rasa.
Right.
So I was appreciating that.
Thank you, Madhumati. That's a really nice point. I'm always completely in awe of Prabhupada's purports, how they're so simple and yet so multi-layered, and how they explain things very nicely, and he uses all sorts of comparisons and metaphors, and he was just so expert in those purports. Yes, next question.
We have 2 online questions. First one from Mahavishnu Priya Mataji. Lord Krishna and the Gopas played fighting in the forests of Vrindavan. This was transcendently pleasing as fun for the Lord, but it is impossible to ever know the mind of the Lord. Thus, we have to rely on the great saints and sages and their realizations. So, seeing through the eyes of pure devotees is essential. Can you comment on this?
Yes, thank you. Absolutely. I mean, I think she said it all. We have to hear from the self-realized souls, from the Mahajans, about what it's all about, right? I mean, if we were to just understand it on our own, it would not be possible. So yes, absolutely, she's absolutely correct. We have to hear from pure devotees and self-realized souls who break it down for us and help us to understand and help us to come to the transcendental platform. Thank you. Anyone else?
The second question is from G.A. I'm not sure who G.A. is. In the spiritual world, everyone cherishes a particular rasa with Krishna. Yet we know Madhurya Ras and the mood of the gopis to be the highest. Is this a contradiction, or how are we to understand this in the best sense?
Thank you. That's a really nice, an important point, and I sort of alluded to it in my class, that each jiva has a particular unique relationship with the Lord, whatever rasa that may fall under. And for that particular jiva, that rasa is 100% perfect and satisfying. So there, in the absolute sense, there's no better rasa or lesser rasa. When we hear the conjugal rasa is the highest, what it means is sort of like it's the most intimate rasa that you can have with the Lord, right? And also in the material world, we can understand that this is the most intimate rasa in the material world as well. So in that sense, it is quote-unquote highest. But for each devotee, whatever his particular rasa is, that is perfect for him, and he's completely satisfied in that relationship, in that rasa. So does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes, Ramiya Prabhu.
So I was just thinking that in the spiritual world, Jai and Vijay reluctantly accepted this rasa. They didn't really seem like they didn't desire it. But on the other hand, Bhishma Dev did desire it. He really felt very happy to engage in that fighting with the Lord. So it seems like a little interesting contrast.
Thank you. Yes, back to the point of there's slightly two different things between who was Hiranyakashipu and who was Bhishma Dev. Yes, Hiranyakashipu had to accept the mentality of a demon, right? So he wasn't actually a demon, right, in an absolute sense, but he had to accept the mentality of a demon because he was cursed by the 4 Kumaras. And with that mentality, Krishna got to sport with him in that fighting spirit, and he got to kill him. And he got to sit on his throne, and he took pleasure in sitting on his throne, right? After he killed him, after he uprooted his heart. And then Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha, they had, I believe, 3 lifetimes where they were demons, right? They were also Ravana and Kumbhakarna and Shishapal and Dantavakra. Thank you. And then they went back to the spiritual world. So, they had to temporarily accept this curse, and they had to accept the mentality of a demon, right? It's very clear it says that they accepted the mentality of a demon, not that they were actual demons. And Krishna got to sport with them, and he got to enjoy his fighting spirit. Madhumati?
Back to the question on the internet, I was thinking that also Madhura, one way to see Madhura Rasa being the highest, because it includes all the 4 rasas. So it has all the 4 rasas and another rasa. So in that sense, it can also be considered as the highest.
Thank you.
Although, like rightly you said, that everybody is satisfied in their rasas. In one sense, there is no higher.
Right. Whatever is your individual rasa that is perfect for you as the individual. Anybody else? Did you want to add something? Yes. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai.